What's up, everybody? How y'all doing today? It's a bit of a rainy day here in Austin. It's fucking up my quarantine tan. But that's all right. It's good riding weather. What's going on, y'all? So today, I'm going to be joined by Matthew Hussey, dating and relationship expert. And I can't wait to talk to him about some stuff. I want to talk about truth and relationship, something that I talked about on my podcast with Whitney for True Sex and Wild Love. And it's just something that's been on my mind a lot lately. So excited to talk about that and how we can reach this level of radical truth. And what a good time to do it. I mean, a lot of us are quarantined with someone, or at least in a lot of communication with that person that we're in relationship with. And even if you're not, it's an ideal that we can take a look at and, kind of explore. Like, is that possible? So let's see if he's there. No, not quite there yet. But that's all right. That's all right. We'll figure this thing out. See when he's ready to join in. How y'all doing? You guys good? Just getting reports that quarantine's going to be lasting longer than we thought. Probably Dallas just issued May 20. So it's going to be quite a few days that we're in this thing. And but I think it's just more opportunity to try and figure out the best way that we can navigate this, the best way that we can come out of this better than when we came in. So, what's up, Cope? How you doing, man? How you doing, Clarence? You doing good, brother? We're going to be on Tuesday. I'm excited about that. It's good to see you. It's always good to see familiar faces on here. All right, there's Matthew. Boom. What's up from New Zealand? How y'all doing? Yeah, an IG live with Paul Check. That'd be dope.
Buddy.
Matthew. My man.
How you doing, pal?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good.
Good to see your face.
Good to see your face, too. What are you going to do about getting haircuts, Matthew? You usually got it pretty fucking dialed in. But
Do you know what? I'm enjoying having shorter hair. And I'm still trying to pass this off as short hair, but it's not. Like, this is getting longer by the day, and if I want to keep up this hairstyle, I'm going to start looking like Jimmy Neutron.
The thing I got to figure out is how to get my sideburns down. I got to figure out how to do that on my own.
I did that the other day. I did a pretty good job as well.
Not bad.
I got the comb and like the razor, and I did the thing. Like, I've got that wrong before.
Yeah, me too. It's terrible. I got like patches. I got patches inside of my head. It's a problem.
Yeah. Well, it's also, you and I don't get to enjoy some of the benefits of quarantine, where you're like, well, not going to shave, not going to groom, not going to look good. There's no one seeing me for the next 3 months. Like we've got the worst of all of it, where we still have to be seen by an extraordinary number of people, even whilst we're going through this
Probably more people, actually, because I'm going live like every day, and I see you live all the time too. So it's like we're actually so in like a month here, it's gonna get haggard. It's gonna be interesting.
I'm just lucky that when I gain weight, it takes a long time for it to show in my face.
Wouldn't that be a thing? Wouldn't that be a thing if it just went straight to your face?
Huh? No, that'd be a disaster for me. That would be a disaster. I'm lucky that it all shows below the nipple. So given that this half is always on camera, I'll be all right for another 2 months.
Dude, I'm going to fucking call your bluff, because I bet you're working out like a savage and you're in here just shredded. Just fucking shredded.
Aubrey,
bluffing.
Your intuition is extraordinary. But in that case, it is way off. That my exercise regime right now is pretty dire. You're the one, actually, I see your pictures and videos of you lifting kettlebells and stuff, and I love you and hate you at the same time.
Well, jump on in with me and Primal Soldier. We're getting after it tomorrow. We're doing a kettlebell workout. You got a kettlebell at your house?
No, I need to find something. Nothing resembles a kettlebell.
I gotta fucking send you one, man. We gotta get you out of kettlebell. And then
Please.
then you're
I'd
good.
love that. Yeah, I'd
Then
love
you're
that.
good. You been well, brother? I know we've been talking, but everything
I've
good?
been good. Yeah, I've been good. You know, my family's in England. That's been the hardest part for me is, you know, the people that I love are not close to me. So that's the part that on a personal level, I struggle with. But that's probably the thing that's kept me up at night, about worrying about family. In terms of my own life, you know, you and I are used to working from home. It's not
Yeah.
something that's new to us. So in that sense, I feel very lucky. I know a lot of people are struggling with doing that for the first time. And I'm lucky that, you know, I don't, I guess, have a job to lose yet.
Yeah.
You know, as long as I keep making videos, then I'll have purpose. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We are really lucky. I mean, we both have the same publisher. A lot of people probably don't know that. But I've been keeping in touch with Karen, and she's like, it's great. You got a book due in 5 months. You know, you can just write. And I was
That's
like, yep, that's true.
the timing of that is exceptional.
Yeah, it
Has it?
is.
I'm curious if for the book that you're writing right now, has this time made you reevaluate what you're writing, and has it made you think of what you've already written and think that's no longer relevant or needs to be updated because people are going to be in a different mindset at the end of this?
Not really. It hasn't reached quite that level yet. I mean, I think there's some interactions because it's all about mindset. It's called Master Your Mind, Master Your Life. And it is about mindset. It's about our orientation to fear. It's about how we look at problems and then find the way that we can take that resistance and make it assistance, find the way to make the best out of any situation. But that's something that I was always, already kind of aware of. And the intensity of this pressure on a personal level hasn't quite reached the level of some of the other journeys like the darkness retreat or some of the other plant medicine journeys that I've been on. So it hasn't necessarily revised it, but it's also made it seem more necessary. Like it's more necessary to control our mind when all around us is just chaos. You know what I mean? The primacy and the importance of the work has increased, not necessarily the content, but it's definitely made it like, all right, like we really need this book.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. All right, so I want to get into what I wanted to talk to you about, which is this kind of revolutionary idea I had for relationships. And as I don't know if all your listeners have joined in, I've been in monogamous relationships. I've been engaged twice, and then I tried a polyamorous relationship, which was quite the learning experience. I mean, incredible highs, unbelievable, unbearable lows, and really challenges, lessons, teachings, all in between. And as I've kind of looked back on that, what I'm really curious about is a relationship that has such a high level of intimacy and such a high level of truth that it's almost the complete collapse of privacy, to where you're so intimate with somebody that there's no privacy of thoughts between you. And that's the agreement you make, that it's like, there's nothing in my journal that I would write that I wouldn't tell you. There's nothing in my phone that I would text anyone that I wouldn't show you. It's just kind of the surrender of the privacy of your thoughts. So you can completely let someone absolutely as close to you as possible. Like radical vulnerability.
Now, are you suggesting that that's an interesting thought experiment, or that that's actually a healthy prescription for a relationship?
It's radical. So I don't know. It's because I don't think there's ever been, I've always had journals and I've always had my own thoughts, and like I'll write something in the journals, I'll figure it out, I'll kind of have the privacy of my own thoughts, and I've respected the privacy of all my partner's thoughts, and I think that's been something that I've kept sacred. But I've always wondered, like, what would happen if you just didn't have that, and you really had someone who knew all of your waffling thoughts, all of your ups and downs, when you have doubts and when you don't have doubts, and then all of a sudden there's no surprises. Because as you know, probably so much of the pain in relationships when you break up or when you find something out, it's like hey, by the way, like, I think we should break up, or like, hey, by the way, I've been thinking about this. And it's like, whoa, where the fuck did that come from? Right? But
Yeah.
if you had this thing, this radical truth, then you would be kind of always knowing where your partner stood.
I suppose the answer comes down to how useful you think it is to know every thought your partner is having, which would be the foundation of which would be the answer to the question, how useful is any thought we're having?
Right?
And if you think about it, so much of what you do in the meditation work that you do and the processes that you take people through is a kind of mindfulness training that helps people to understand that just because you're having a thought, it doesn't make that thought either true or important.
True.
So in a sense, if I would be concerned that if I were voicing every one of my thoughts to my partner, that I'm actually attaching more usefulness and more value to those thoughts than is even true for me. How many thoughts in a day do I have that I look back on an hour later and I go, what a moron I was for thinking that? You know, an anxious thought, and I go, God, why was I so anxious about that? What a silly thing to be thinking. So
True.
I would be deeply concerned about subjecting somebody else to the nightmare of my internal dialogue, 99% of which is complete bollocks.
Yeah. Okay. So that's true. That's true. However, if you're with a partner who recognized that they also had thoughts that were 99% bollocks, and that you both understood that both of you were going to have these completely errant, out of the blue, random thoughts. It was like there was a philosopher who posited this thought experiment. What would it be like if we could all read each other's minds completely? And he would like, the first thing that would happen, everybody would go straight into their house and they would be terrified because everybody would think of each other as a monster. Because we all have dark thoughts, we all have fucked up thoughts, we all have all of these errant thoughts, and these thoughts are not actual things that we want to do, they're just things that kind of flow through the mind. But after a while, after we recognize that everybody had these fucked up thoughts, then we would be like, oh, well, that's just part of being a human being. It's having these thoughts that go in these weird cyclical loops that are sometimes meaningful, sometimes not meaningful. And then, so if you had a partner that understood that and you understood that about your partner, it's not that you would be compelled to share every little thing, like have no inner monologue, because then you would never be able to talk about anything because you'd be so busy talking about all the fucking riffraff in your mind. But that you could have this complete openness where you'd be like, yeah, you know, I had these fucked up thoughts today, had these beautiful thoughts today, had these ugly thoughts today, had these, you know, these challenging thoughts today, had all of these things. And your phone would always be face up. You know, there would never be any concern about that. Your journal would always be on the counter, and if somebody wanted to read it, they could read it. And it would be, well, not somebody, but your partner, somebody you made this agreement with.
Yes, I think so. This is actually, I'm really glad you posed this kind of thought experiment because it raises a lot of really interesting questions that are very practical to people. So a couple of things come up for me. One, you're absolutely right. That idea that if we, you know, we would initially we would run and hide because, my God, all of my shame, all of my darkest thoughts, all of the ways I'm messed up, that's all now out there in public. And seeing other people's thoughts is amazing because you do realize, oh my God, I'm not mental. Like this is normal. This level of mental is normal. So we don't see that dark side of people. We don't see the private thoughts. And I think that's to our detriment. So that's a good thing. And in the context of a relationship, it's lovely sometimes to hear, you know, when you hear your partner experiences a certain, for example, insecurity, like I'm fascinated by the moment where you're talking to somebody else. Maybe you're just having, you know, a conversation. Your partner, for whatever reason, feels jealous. And you come back and now they're either going to not say anything or they're going to say something. Of course, one of the worst ways we enact that is to say, why were you talking to that person? What, you know, we go into that.
Yeah, we get pointy. We get pointy.
Right. As opposed to saying, something about that situation just made me feel deeply insecure. And I'm like, I know I'm putting on a good face right now, but there's a part of me that's screaming right now. Now, I'm fascinated by that moment because on one hand, we all go through that moment. We've all had that moment many, many times where we go, all right, I'm the jealous one here. I'm the one who's had that voice is screaming inside. Now I can say something so that they know me better, or so that they know how they're making me feel right now. But the dilemma is it going to make me look weak? If I look weak and insecure, is that going to make them less attracted to me?
Yep.
And is that going to precipitate the very thing I'm most afraid of, that they're going to go and find someone who's hot and confident and doesn't have any of these scary thoughts?
Right.
The other side of it is, but if I reveal this part of me, then we're going to get even more connected. They're going to know how to treat me. They're going to understand that certain things make me feel a certain way and be more conscious of those things. And that's a good thing for our relationship. We're stuck between those two modes of the truth that could either bring me closer or make me less attractive, or it doesn't even have to be a lie. It could just be withholding, which creates
Just tough
a
it out.
disconnect.
Just tough it out. Make it through.
Right.
Nobody knows. No worse for wear.
Right.
We're all good.
And on that level, you know, the truth probably lies somewhere in between, in that being vulnerable can be very attractive to our partner because they realize, oh my God, I love that you feel that too sometimes. I get that sometimes when you're doing this. Aren't we? You know, look how much we're connecting right now. There's a moment there, like people's vulnerabilities can make them very attractive and can bring us closer and can make us love them even more. But it's probably also true that there's a point at which someone repeating the same insecurity, there's a number of times in a day past which you saying that is productive. And now you're no longer sharing a piece of you. You are simply making your internal dialogue somebody else's baggage to carry. And at that point, I think it's an abdication of responsibility, because it's my
that's like a
responsibility.
That's like a check engine light that's constantly on, right? If you're constantly just insecure, that's a check engine light for yourself. And so in the intimate construct of this imagined relationship, that would be like, you would reflect back, hey, this is a check engine light for you to really work on these core insecurities, work on your self-love, work on the appreciation of the intrinsic essence of who you are, so that you can actually not have these thoughts anymore. But thank you for sharing. Continue to share them. I'll help you with the work to help you love yourself, because my love won't do it.
And that's exactly right. It's by revealing something about yourself, you're giving someone, you're letting them know a way that they can support you and love you, which is great. You're actually giving them a gift because you're showing them a way that they can support. But by dumping on them consistently, you're now, instead of trying to work on it, you're simply just voicing that constantly. I think the other curiosity, the other kind of fascination I have with what you're saying is, there are certain thoughts that I have to believe are not helpful for your partner to know. And I'm curious on your thoughts on this, because I have a feeling they may differ from mine. But, there are certain things about how you feel, or how much sexual desire you feel for someone else in this moment, or that I feel perhaps in an open relationship that may be different. In a monogamous relationship, I feel it's unhelpful to your partner to know every one of those thoughts, unhelpful and unnecessary for your partner to know every one of those thoughts that go through your head. Now, if your partner says to you, do you ever find someone else attractive? And you say, I never have since the day we met. I've never found another person hot since the day we met. Then that might be patronizing your partner, because we all know that, there are other people that we can recognize as attractive or good looking, even if objectively. But to add the emotion to it of the person you're with and love, and whose ego you kind of want to protect in some way, you're not, openly saying to them, wow, I'm really horny for that person right now. That I feel is, I at least in my relationships feel that it's my job to protect the the ego of that person, and to nurture that part of them, and that there are certain things that are destructive to that.
So that would mean to me that basically to engage in this, you would have to both go into a mutual agreement that this is going to be unbelievably challenging for the ego. And this is going to put pressure on the ego to actually reevaluate and to re-know itself. And for you to re-know your partner as someone who's same as you. So that you're both going to be sharing these very human thoughts and human tendencies. And so that you're going to have, instead of emotion behind it, you're going to have the opportunity for understanding, for forgiveness, for recognition of same, like tatvamasi, I am that too. Like, oh yeah, like I had one of those today when I was at the gym, and you had that when you were at the store. Interesting. And then you get to this point where you really realize, like, wow, we're just the same. And then there's no projected part of you that someone can't see into. It's like the most radical intimacy that I'm hypothesizing. Now, this may never actually reach practicality, you know, like it may be something that is just a hypothetical, but in that hypothetical where you really understood that and had that complete intimacy, I think you would feel so loved. If you knew that no matter what thought you had, you were loved for that thought, wow, you would feel so loved.
I don't know if I'm strong enough, Aubrey. I'm like, Aubrey, I'm like, if I imagine myself, I don't, even if I was giving it to someone else, I can't imagine a version of this where I don't end up curled up in a ball in the corner of a closet somewhere crying.
Well, as someone who's been curled up in the corner of a closet in a ball, crying on my hands and knees, not knowing if I wanted to vomit or throw myself down the stairs, like I've been there. Like I know the feeling, you know?
I'm talking to a man who opted to be in a room of darkness for 6 days at the beginning of the year by choice. You're not a normal human being. When you told me you were going to go into a room that with all the lights out, with no, you know, fraction of light coming in for 6 days, I thought that sounds like hell. And I don't know. I'm quite sensitive, and I think that I think if I were to hear these things, I would be. If I were with a partner and someone I loved, and I heard her saying to me that I actually am that guy over there, I didn't think I could be more attracted to anyone than you. But actually, turns out that guy I'm even more attracted to him. I'll stay with you, but just so you know, that I am more attracted to him than you. I think it might.
Unlocked between both of you was complete telepathy, where you and your partner could actually read each other's thoughts, and you were stuck with them, and you couldn't leave. You're in quarantine, so it's not a situation too dissimilar from now. You're in quarantine, and you actually are forced to reckon with the fact that your thoughts are exposed and their thoughts are exposed. Now, for a little while, that would be hell. That would be real hell. I get it, for sure. But at a certain point, you would adapt.
Here's what I'd say.
At a certain point, you'd be forced to adapt.
I'd say, listen, I need you to listen to this thought very carefully. I am a moron. And that is about to be revealed to you in many different colors and shapes and sizes. You cannot trust what information you're receiving right now. I can't even trust it. We both need to, you're going to hear a lot of stuff, and the only things that I want you to listen to of any value are the things that I'm consciously telling you. The rest is garbage. You may as well be watching the Kardashians on TV every night. That's the level at which I'm going to be pitching at with my thoughts.
Yep. And I think you would both have to understand that about each other. And you'd be like, okay, all right. And I think that's what's just really curious to me, is it would be a hell of an on-ramp, because it's a radical thing. Like, we're really vulnerable. We all went to Poland, we breathed, we shared our intimate thoughts, and it's kind of easier to be like this with like your mates, with your friends, you know? And we can get to this state where we're pretty much sharing whatever we're thinking. you know, because there's no judgment, there's no ego attached, there's no insecurity, and that can bring like real closeness, you know, between friends. And I think, you know, that idea of like that level of closeness is just something that
that's really that's a very, you kind of hit on perhaps the nub of the issue, which is that what a liberating thing it is to go through what we went through together. And then I know I could call you up and voice a dark thought, and you'd be like, tell me more. Like, cool, man. Like, that's cute. I'd say that's interesting. All right. Like, I know I could tell you whatever and it would be great. But we tend to have very different expectations of our partner than we do our friends. And, you know, as Esther Perel talks about this in her book, Mating in Captivity, she says, like, the problem is we do, and perhaps not the problem, but the truth is that we have so many rules for our partner that we don't have for our friends. If you called me up today and said, Matt, I just met this guy, like, we just went through this challenge together last week. It was incredible. Like, you can't imagine, like, and dude, you got to meet this guy. This is an amazing guy. We have such a deep bond after last week. I wouldn't go, why are you hanging out with other people, Aubrey? Like, what? Why are you doing, the ice thing was our thing. Why are you doing challenges with another man? I'd say, well, let's all hang out. You know?
Yeah, totally.
But you could imagine how many different contexts where if our partner came and said something to us that a friend did, we have a different set of rules. And that's why I think the same level of honesty with our partners that we sometimes have with our best friends, who we expect a lot less of in many ways, is extremely difficult and perhaps dangerous to the relationship.
It is definitely, and this is like, and then we're talking into like an extreme experiment. And I think what brought it to my mind is my experience with polyamory. And what I realized is so much of the pain came from the surprise, right? Like, it would be like, oh, I'm going to go hang out with this person. Okay, cool. You know, and like, oh, like, I think I'm going to sleep with this person. You're like, what? I thought you guys were just friends. Like, what? Fuck. You know, and then it was like, as the truth hit, you know, it was like, damn. And then it would be successive. And then it'd be like, you know what? Like, I actually am falling in love with this person. I'm like, what? You got to be what? Like, oh, no, what? Like, no, you know? And it would be like this surprise that would be just so unbelievably devistating.
This is what, you know, Guy Winch, who wrote a book called How to Fix Your Broken Heart. He makes a very valid point in the book, which is that when someone breaks up with us, the reason that we're 3 months later still unable to look at another human being and they're able to move on quickly is because they already have been having this breakup for the last 3 months.
Exactly.
So they were discussing the breakup with themselves 3 months ago. You're just hearing about it today.
Right.
So that backs up your point. And I suppose in a breakup, people often feel, well, it would have been more fair had you raised, perhaps not the fact that you're thinking of breaking up with me, because I think the problem with that is that even if it's true, it introduces a fundamental earth-shattering level of insecurity that you may not be able to overcome. So it
may actually precipitate an end which may not actually happen if the thought was not introduced.
Correct. And so now, instead of waking up thinking, how do I make this relationship as good as I can be? You're waking up every day going, are they going to leave today? Like, is today the day? Like, so I think there may be a middle point where people need to, you know, not wait until the day they've decided to break up with, in this example, not wait until the day they've decided to break up with someone to suddenly give them all 10 of the biggest issues they've had with them in the relationship, but actually gives people a chance to visit some of those areas sooner. In the same way that we don't go to an employee in a company and tell them on the day that we're firing them all the things that are wrong with them. If we're doing it the right way, they
Yeah.
should have had a chance to fix that shit months ago.
Yeah.
And perhaps in your example, which is a more nuanced one, is like, if someone, I mean, it's so hard. If someone's like thinking about being with someone else while they're with you, it's hard to say. It's hard to say for them to say to you, I feel myself beginning to get attracted to this person. Maybe that is the more fair thing to do, because at least at that point you can say, well, listen, if you're about to fuck me over in the next month, I would rather you just left now instead of giving the information to me after the fact. At least it gives you a chance to say that instead of the most hurtful thing that can possibly happening, and then you find out in retrospect. At least you get a chance to distance yourself emotionally before it happens.
Yeah, you have like a little bit of a warning shot, you know. It's instead of you have the aftershocks that come before the earthquake. You know what I mean?
People don't
Like,
want to give you the warning shot, because human nature is to keep parallel paths running for as long as you can until you really know which one you want to take. And you know that by tipping your hand to someone else that there even is a parallel path going on in your mind, you might actually lose that option altogether, because they may decide they don't want you, or that they're now afraid and they're going to back away. So the selfish part of us says, well, I don't fully know if I want this person yet. So I'm not going to tell either, because right now I just want to run these down the road and see which one is. But by that point, you're doing maximum damage. So it's, you know, it's the safest for you in terms of keeping options open, but it's the most damaging and selfish in terms of what you do to other people.
Yeah. And I think like taking this a step back from the radical example, that's very pragmatic advice. And the pragmatic advice is to actually see that person as you living a different life and give them at least as much truth as you would want to receive. And like, if we were going to wrap this whole conversation up in a bow, I think that's finally the ultimate lesson, which is give the amount of truth that you would want to receive in return.
That's interesting. I'm processing that. What if you have a completely different standard for truth than someone else, and someone else says, well, you might want to know how many people I've slept with, but I don't want to tell you how many. You may want to know how many people I've slept with, but I don't want to know how many people you've slept with.
So I was put in that very same situation. So I was still in the tail end of a polyamorous kind of construct, and I met a girl that I really liked, and that girl was like, all right, it's cool, you can still do your thing, it was actually almost like we were dating still, you know, but we lived in different states. So she was like, listen, like, you can do what you want to do, just don't tell me about it. And I was like, okay, like, I think I can do that. And the thing was, what ended up happening is I would see somebody and I would have to tell her. She's like, I don't want to know. I just don't want to know. So I would have to tell her. I'd be like, hey, so I got a lot of work tonight, so I'm going to be busy. And but I'll catch you tomorrow. Meanwhile, I'm dating somebody else. And that whole time I was like, God, I feel like a fucking schmuck. You know, like, I want to tell her the truth. You know? And so what ended up happening is I felt like she loved a version of me that was not the actual me, not actually what I was doing. So I stopped being able, she was a very loving person, but I stopped being able to receive that love from her.
Well, and she was even giving you permission to do
even
what you
I
wanted
had
to
full
do,
permission.
But saying, it's just see no evil, hear no evil. I don't want to. I don't want to know about it. You do your thing, but I don't want to know about it. And by the way, how many relationships function like that? There's a huge number of relationships where someone is saying to someone else, either verbally or not, I have awareness that there are things you're doing I don't like, but I like what's happening here. I like our setup. I want this life, so I'm going to ignore this so that I can keep this. Your job is just to make sure that the fantasy doesn't come tumbling down for me. So you now have the job of constructing the world that this person wants to perceive. And that's, of course, where your discomfort comes from, is you're now living incongruously with who you really are.
Yeah. So for me, I think it's almost has to be bilateral. And that's the thing, because you raised the question if people have different standards of truth. I'm really kind of painting myself in a corner because I'm actually desiring this. I propose this as a thought experiment, but I'm actually desiring a situation where maybe it's not all the thoughts, because thoughts, as you said, are usually complete bollocks, they're complete rubbish. But I'm actually desiring a situation of extraordinary radical truth. Like extraordinary, where I'm expressing radical truth, they're expressing radical truth, and I'm quite happy to do so within a monogamous container or within any another container. I'm not kind of container biased, you know, but nonetheless, like I do definitely desire to hear the most radical truth, but I think I also require the ability to share my most radical truth. And that's
Now,
this kind of narrow area that I find myself in, this peninsula.
I'm curious because I feel like what if you say, okay, that's what I want, I still, even if I don't think I'm brave enough to want that, but even if I was, I would still want to be with someone who had an ability to articulate truths in a manner that is both the most palatable it could be and the least destructive.
The most loving, at the very least.
Right. And that, I think, when people say, there's a lot of people who are like, I speak my mind, that's who I am, I just speak my mind, what do you want to do? Like, how you know, what's your problem? I just speak my mind. And you're like, well, you do, fine, but there's a way to speak your mind that's productive. And I think that's the step that a lot of people miss when they say just be honest, is that there are actually levels of articulacy. And if that weren't true, then a 5-year-old would be as good in a room as a 75-year-old who's developed incredible social acuity over the course of their life.
Right.
There's a reason that parents find their kids to be a bloody liability at a party, because while they're telling Steve that he looks good in that suit, the kid comes along and says, why are you so fat? You know, it's like clearly there are levels at which you can articulate truth that are more helpful. And so I think that if you were going to find that, you'd need to find someone who is both incredibly loving but also incredibly articulate, so that they weren't just, their truth didn't become a sledgehammer that smashed you in the face every 10 seconds.
Yeah, and they'd have to be extraordinarily mindful of their judgmental nature, because, you know, your truth is not your judgments. Like, you can have a judgment, but that's just a judgment, and you have to recognize that it's a judgment. So you would have to phrase that, and the emotional intelligence would have to be so high that they would, and their awareness would have to be so high that they would say, I'm having a petty judgment right now, and in my petty egoic judgment, I'm thinking that this outfit looks shitty. But that's just a petty egoic judgment that's completely mine to work on, and I need to improve that. So
Right.
I'm sorry that I'm sharing this, because it clearly highlights my deficiencies in my own mental thinking and my judgmental nature. You know what I mean? So it would have to be almost to that point where you'd have to recognize that if you're having these superficial judgmental thoughts, that's your own shit. You're being judgmental.
But are you, I'm curious, because you are, you know, you're a very manly man with a high degree of emotional intelligence. Is there a part where the guy in you would just think, this is a lot of talking? That thing you just said to me took a long time to say. Probably easier if you just didn't say it at all.
Yeah, you know, I think it would be a lot of talking at first, but then I think eventually you would start to get in the rhythm where you wouldn't even have to express everything, because you would kind of know each other so well that, like, you would just get used to the usual. Here's the usual nonsense, the usual nonsense that keeps coming. Like,
are you
okay,
are you ready for your 6 p.m. bollocks?
Yeah.
Here we go. Remember, ready for your 8:30 bullshit? All right, let me dish it to you.
Yeah, and you'd have to get to a place where you could do that with a laugh.
Oh,
you know?
Man, you are a braver and more patient man than I, Aubrey.
Well, I haven't done it. So I'm still hypothetical, but I'm
Then
very
you may
curious.
simply be a masochist.
Yeah. Look, I've already been that. I've already been that before. Like I've already felt the lowest lows that I could possibly imagine, and I've also felt the highest highs. So I've definitely put myself on a roller coaster where it's been a lot of ups and a lot of downs. But what I'm curious about is whether truth could just level everything out, just cancel all the surprises, all of those huge
Well,
kind of dips.
I definitely know that I've had relationships where I felt I was able to say something that I wasn't able to say to anyone before, and that the reason I felt I was able to say it was because the nature of that relationship provided a very safe, secure place to talk, without reflex responses and judgments and treading on eggshells. And I do remember, to your point, just an incredible feeling of freedom to know that I felt more seen than I ever had before. That I really felt like, and that's the interesting thing about relationships. It's attraction comes in many different forms. There's the animal attraction that we feel from that kind of chemistry. There's a deeper attraction that comes from feeling like we've connected on the deepest level. And when you feel seen, truly seen, and someone gets closer to you than perhaps anyone else ever has and doesn't reject that, that is a powerful attracting force, because
No doubt.
you're like, oh my God, you've seen that room in the house and you still want to live here. Like,
Yeah.
that's an amazing feeling. And now you love that person even more because they've seen that room and they're still like, yeah, don't worry, I'm not leaving. What a mental room, but I'm not leaving. That's a nice feeling. So I've had that feeling, and I can back up what you're talking about on that level, that it's a beautiful thing when you find it.
Yeah,
And you have to also be brave enough to ask for it.
Somebody just mentioned on the comments I saw, it was something that I thought of, like the movie Avatar. Like the thing they say instead of "I love you" is "I see you."
Which is so beautiful. I've never forgotten that. Like, that's such
Me
a
neither.
powerful idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, brother, we got to do this again, man. This is too fucking fun.
You know what's so funny? I literally, when you said to me, you didn't tell me anything about this. You just said, let's do it live. I'm going to talk to you about, like, is the truth scary in relationships? And I just thought to myself, what? I'm setting myself up here for an incredibly difficult conversation, because you're going to ask me all sorts of impossible questions that I can't answer. And so I felt vulnerable coming into this, because I'm like, fucking Aubrey, like, he thinks about this shit all the time, and here's me like walking into a conversation about the ethics and the morality and the study of truth and how important it is at every level in a relationship. I'm just happy to. I think it's fun. You and I, that's the fun thing. You and I would actually be having this conversation in private if we were sat back in Poland on the sofa together. This is something you and I would talk about in our spare time. So I actually think it's fun that we got to do it in front of everyone.
No doubt. I agree, brother. And you crushed it, as I expected. I had no doubts. I haven't seen all the rooms of your mental house, but I'm sure I like them.
Mate, I'll reveal one a month to you over the next the next few months.
Beautiful.
Man, I'm so happy to see you, man. And it's fun for me to have more of my audience get to know you as well, because, I say to people, like, you are such an interesting thinker, and you elicit conversations from me that other people don't, because of the kinds of questions and thought experiments that you pose. So I know that my audience also gets a different side of me by me interacting with you. So thank you for that.
Of course, brother. Of course. Well, we'll do this again, my man.
Yeah, man.
I love you, brother.
I love you too, pal. You take care, all right?
All right, you too.
All right, bye.
Bye.